The way we support families is directly shaping the strength of our communities, our workforce, and our future. Mental health is not just a personal issue. It is a public health issue, a community issue, and quite frankly, it's an economic issue. Today's conversation brings all of that into focus. I'm joined by Brook Thomas, who serves as a mayor of a town in Michigan and as a forensic interviewer at the Children's Advocacy Center, where she works directly with children and families navigating some of the most complex and sensitive experiences, including child sexual and physical abuse. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. The reality is, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys experience sexual abuse before the age of 18. And the average age of disclosure is 52 years old. Yes, 52 years old. Untreated childhood trauma is linked to increased rates of anxiety, depression, chronic health issues, and decreased workplace productivity in adulthood. So this is not just about parenting. This is about how unaddressed trauma quietly shapes relationships, families, workplaces, and entire communities. In this episode, we break down what a Children's Advocacy Center actually is and why it changes outcomes for kids and families, how trauma that goes unaddressed in childhood carries into adulthood, why prevention and early intervention are not just compassionate, they are cost-effective and economically responsible, and what it looks like to build a trauma-informed community and workplace. Because when families are struggling silently, businesses feel it by increased absenteeism, higher healthcare costs, lower productivity, and decreased employee retention. Research shows that untreated mental health challenges cost U.S. businesses hundreds of billions of dollars each year in lost productivity and healthcare expenses. And when people feel supported at home and in their mental health, they show up differently. They're more focused, more regulated, more capable. This conversation is about zooming out and understanding that when we strengthen families, we strengthen everything. Let's get into it. Hi, Brook Thomas.
Hello, Dylan Cook.
Thanks for joining me today. I've been so excited about this interview and I've been thinking about it a lot. And so I'm so grateful that you said yes.
Yeah, I appreciate you thinking about the Children's Advocacy Center and wanting to spotlight what we do in our community. So I'm super excited to speak with you today.
The CAC holds a special place in my heart because, as you know, this is where I did my master's internship. The CAC laid the foundation for where I went with my career. And so I love the CAC.
I appreciate that you've always kind of kept us in your heart and you're remembering us here coming up for Child Abuse Prevention Month. It's a perfect time to do a little collaboration together.
Yeah, so all of April is Child Abuse Prevention Month?
Yes, nationally. Every CAC does a celebration for the month of April.
Why don't we start there? Like, what is the CAC? You're a forensic interviewer, which sounds super legit because it is. Tell us, like, what the organization is and then kind of what your role is.
Sure. CAC is just the acronym that we use for Children's Advocacy Centers. It is nationwide. Essentially, we are your local experts in all things child sexual and physical abuse. The Children's Advocacy Center movement was meant to bring together investigations of child sexual abuse. So back in the day, before CACs existed, when a child disclosed sexual abuse, there were a lot of different entities that had to investigate these allegations. So you've got your law enforcement, you've got Children's Protective Services, and each of these two entities have very different roles. One is investigating a criminal act. The other is trying to make sure that child is safe in their home. So what children had to do was repeat their story of abuse over and over and over again to all these different entities. Sometimes it would be maybe first to their school counselor, then to a police officer, then to a CPS worker, then to maybe a nurse. And then once the prosecutors got involved, they had to talk to the prosecutor and then the jury. And so children were having to recount their abuse over and over and over again, which is
re-traumatizing.
Exactly. Very traumatizing. And not only was it traumatizing for the child to have to talk about their experiences over and over, it was a detriment to the criminal case, because when untrained individuals talk with children about these things in different ways, naturally children are going to recount their experiences in slightly different ways because they're being asked different questions, they're remembering different things. And so defense attorneys pick up on that and they use that as ammo against the case and saying, well, that's inconsistent. They didn't say that in their first interview. It's different now. And so coordinating these cases is just more effective for the case overall.
If you're dealing with a child who has disclosed sexual or physical abuse, it's a very delicate situation. All of these different entities might not be trained for the best interest of the child, right? How do you, as a forensic interviewer who's trained in this, like what kind of things do you do that maybe a police officer wouldn't know how to do?
Right. That's a really great point because police officers and CPS workers, they have so many different tasks that they have to do in their job. They're investigating all these different things. My sole job is to talk with children about their experiences, and I'm highly trained. That's all I do all day, every day. And so I follow a protocol. It's the state of Michigan forensic interviewing protocol. You have to get specially trained in it. And there's lots of different trainings I attend nationwide on the different techniques to use with children because communicating with children takes different question types than you would be talking with an adult. Their brains are different from us.
Yeah.
And so to utilize somebody who's highly trained in talking with children about their experiences is going to be much more effective, not only for the child to talk about their experiences, but to also safeguard against potential wrongful accusations against people who maybe have done nothing. We want to protect both sides.
That's a really good point. And then also, you guys are doing this at a very warm building. There's like some toys here for a kid to kind of fidget with. And it's all very, like, you guys have the child's experience in mind when they're coming through the organization, right?
Yep, that's absolutely true. From the moment families walk through the door, our waiting room has a lot of developmentally sensitive toys for kids of all ages. We want to appeal to kids as young as 2 all the way up to 17, 18, and we interview kids of all different ages. And then the interview rooms, they're pretty simple and basic, but they're also very child friendly. There's not a lot of distractions and a lot of toys in the interview rooms. We want to keep it bright, friendly, but also neutral and providing a space that children can talk about things in a way that's child friendly and developmentally sensitive.
Yeah. Okay. So when a child makes a disclosure, they come into the CAC, right? They do an interview, and then all the people that need the information are kind of behind a mirror, right? So that everyone can get that information in one setting. Right?
Correct.
Okay.
Essentially, there's an observation room where all those people we talked about, police officers, prosecutors, children's protective services worker, they can sit on the other side and watch the interview happening live. And I tell kids this, so I let them know I work with a team of people. They're behind that mirror, the other side. They're going to watch us talk today. I also let them know that it's a safe space for them to talk about things, that they're not in any trouble with me, and that they can talk about anything that they want to in that room. I do let them know that the interviews are all video recorded, just so that if something concerning is discussed, then the team has that information moving forward with their investigations. But that way the child has an opportunity to hopefully just talk about their experiences that one time instead of over and over again, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah. And re-traumatizing the kid. That's great. So, but that's not all you guys do. You also offer free counseling services, right? For like the family.
We do. Yep. So I kind of talk about CACs having 3 different prongs. The first one being prevention. We go into the schools and talk with kids about body safety. The next one being the interviews or the intervention. And then the healing aspect of therapy. We have counselors here on site who provide either virtual or in-person therapy for any child who has disclosed abuse or any non-offending family members. So maybe a caregiver who wasn't the abuser, they need help processing this stuff too. So all of our services we offer here are free. We also have a little medical room. So if a child needs a follow-up exam or they just want to talk with a nurse specialized in child sexual abuse, they have that medical personnel to talk to about any concerns that they have with their body.
So if this is a nonprofit and all of the services are free, how do you guys get your funding? Tell me about that a little bit.
Very good question. I'm sure people everywhere know that nonprofits are all struggling nationwide with trying to secure funding that is consistent. We do rely on a lot of federal and state dollars, and that kind of is threatened to be taken away all the time. Right now, a lot of nonprofits are dealing with budget cuts, and we are no different. So we are struggling with those factors. We also rely on a lot of fundraising efforts, donations. We have a very generous community. We get a lot through our annual fundraiser that we have every year in August or September usually. And then we do a lot in April too for Child Abuse Prevention Month. The county gives us some dollars to conduct these interviews. So we essentially get dollars from a lot of different entities, but we're always looking for different ways to diversify and bring in more money to support our efforts.
And it's stressful, right? Like, this has to constantly be on your mind to keep the doors open and to keep these services free for families.
Yeah, more so for our executive director. Luckily, I don't have to worry personally But she does a really good job of kind of shielding us from some of that. But we know that the threat is
Yeah.
always there. We want to make sure that we are here for as long as the community needs us, which unfortunately will probably be for a very long time into the future.
Okay, so if I was a member of the community, which I am, but I didn't know about the CAC or I haven't had any connection or education on it, why should I give my money as like maybe a monthly donor to support the CAC? There's this misconception that, oh, abuse doesn't happen in these demographics, right? That's
Right.
only for those people.
Right.
But what we know is that abuse happens everywhere to everyone, every age, socioeconomic class, race, across the board. It does not discriminate. So, what's the buy-in for people in the community to support something like this?
Yeah. Well, you make a very good point that child abuse and child sexual abuse affects everybody. Every city, every district, every school district is affected by this. And what's tricky is that the topic of child sexual abuse is more taboo. People don't love talking about this openly. You can talk about the animal shelter and say dog, you can put a picture of a dog who's abused. It's a
Yes.
harder conversation to have because people don't love to think about child sexual
No.
abuse or that this phenomenon even exists in our community, but it does, unfortunately, and it a lot of times kind of flies under the radar.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shame involved with these situations. A lot of children and families feel like they may have been ostracized either from their community or other family members. And so it's not a topic that's easy for families or schools or anybody to talk about openly. We've come a long way with our prevention program, getting into schools and kind of making the topic of abuse more easily accessible to talk about. It's normalized when you talk about it more. Some kids are like, well, hey, that happened to me. I didn't know what to do about it. And so the more we talk about it, the more we raise this issue, the more normalized it becomes. All that to say, all community members are affected by this, not only through their own families, but maybe their friends or peers. It has a trickling effect into the economy, even into how resilient we are as a community.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the statistics are pretty alarming. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys have experienced sexual abuse before the age of 18. Like 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys. And I would wonder if potentially the statistic about boys could be even higher because I think there's even more shame that comes from boys who have been sexually abused. I don't know if you've seen that at all in your work, but
Yep, absolutely. I think you're spot on with that. And it's hard to give statistics of things that go unreported, right? It's hard to be like, there's an exact statistic, but we definitely know that the average age of disclosure of child sexual abuse is 52 years old. So that tells us that if people
Whoa.
aren't disclosing their childhood sexual abuse until midlife, there's so much abuse that's going unreported.
Yeah. I think it's common to have this idea of what child sexual abuse is. And I think what I really love about the prevention program is that you guys talk about in the schools in a way that's like safety between peers, right? Like digital safety, peers, but also there can be different age peers, and there also can be an adult that perpetrates on a child. So it's very vast, and it's pretty much not the creepy man in the van, right?
Right.
It's a family member. I think that was the hardest thing for me to realize when I worked here is that the most prominent perpetrators are someone that's close to the family. That kind of messed me up a little bit.
I mean, everybody's heard of stranger danger, and
Yeah.
we're all educated kind of growing up on stay away from the creepy van. And that's just not the reality of the majority of cases. 90% of offenders are known to the child. So whether it is a family member or a family friend or a neighbor, babysitter, the perpetrators are vast majority somebody that's important to that child.
Yeah. And that there can be a long process too of like grooming, which is the process of kind of exposing the child bit by bit to kind of disarm them and then,
Right.
perpetrate
And
the abuse.
people hear that term grooming a lot. I think a lot of people aren't as familiar with the fact that perpetrators not only groom their victim, but they groom the family, and they can also groom an entire community. Very similar tactics that they use of desensitizing, but it's also presenting themselves in a very respectable, trustworthy way so that if allegations ever did arise, the community or the family would rise to the offender's defense and say, there's no way that person could have committed those crimes. Look at how great he is. Look at all the the things he's done in our community. You
Mhm.
can look at national news stories and see how this plays out. And it's not always someone who's a prominent figure, but that is one way that perpetrators can groom their community, is gaining the
Yeah.
trust of the masses.
Yeah. Which, okay, so two thoughts. A, I do want to make sure that we know that females can be offenders too, right? I think
Absolutely.
statistically we think more about men being perpetrators, but obviously female can be offenders as well. But like as a parent of 3 young kids, that terrifies me because my parent reaction is, okay, so should I just keep my kids shielded from
Hmm.
everybody?
Right.
If we're going to openly talk about this, as a parent, it makes me anxious. But then I also know that other adults in my children's lives can be so protective for my kids. That's why I think the education is so important, because we need to figure out what are the signs? How do we make smart choices for our kids? How are we cautious, but not to the point where we're crazy, you
Yeah.
know?
Right. Well, and this is a great opportunity for me to put a plug for one of the programs that we offer. It is free, so we're not going to benefit financially from it. We put on a training called Darkness to Light. It is geared towards adults in our community. Whether you're a parent or an aunt or an uncle or a teacher, pastor, this is a great training tool that we offer for free again to teach adults what the actual risks are and how to protect your child, because no matter what we do, we can never reduce the risk of child sexual abuse to absolute zero. That's just unrealistic. But there's things that you can do for your child to lessen that risk, so
Hmm.
that if something were to ever happen, that child knows exactly what to do. The adults in that child's life knows exactly what to do, and you know how to respond appropriately to that child to make sure that they go from being a victim to a survivor to a thriver, and
Hmm.
that this thing that happened to them doesn't define their life or their future or their mental health. Because there's definitely ways you can react poorly, but there's ways you can react appropriately and help guide that child on their healing path.
Okay, so the Darkness to Light program makes me think again about someone who could be listening to this interview and go, oh, well, this has never happened to anyone in my family, right? Well, what if their daughter's friend is over and she discloses something or he discloses something?
Right.
Again, this is why the organization matters, because that parent would then be able to know how to appropriately respond to that child and what the next steps are. And so I think what's nuanced about this is that the more people are aware of this, the safer the children in the community are, right?
Exactly. Right.
And at the same time, the people closest to us could be the perpetrators, but also like they could also be the saviors.
Yeah.
So like, how do we, I don't know. I just think like education in general can really reduce some of these risks.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
even if you are in the community, like you said, there could be people who are beneficial to your family and harmful to your family. And the more educated that you are and you make it known, it makes your family less of a target for someone who is trying to prey on children. If you're
Yeah.
having conversations about body safety and rules around who can help my child in the bathroom, that is flagging to others. I have a lens of child safety already in my head, and I'm taking measures to make sure that my child is safe and that nobody does something to them. So you're kind of being a protective factor already for your child before someone even tries to break that
Wait,
boundary.
that's actually such a good point. The perpetrator is smart, right? They know what they're doing, and so they see, oh, this kid could be vulnerable, and they prey on that. And so that makes me feel really confident about. I'm very cautious about this stuff after working at the CAC,
Yeah.
to the point where I'm sure some people are like, whoa, like you are really care about who's in the bathroom with your child. I'm like, I absolutely do. I
Yep.
absolutely do. Yeah.
Yep.
I read a book one time about a survivor of a sexual abuse, and she said that she didn't disclose until she was an adult because what she had been taught, if something bad happens to you, you need to tell a parent. And in her mind, and this again is a very uncomfortable thing to talk about, it didn't feel bad to her because it was someone who she loved,
Hmm.
someone who she respected and trusted, and it felt good. She felt special from it. It is so layered, it's so nuanced, and the average person might not know all of these different things that could be happening to create a environment for sexual abuse to happen.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you raise a good point about this term bad too. That's why historically we would teach good touch, bad touch. We don't use that language anymore. What our prevention team uses is safe touches, unsafe touches, and confusing touches. So the
Mhm.
unsafe being the abusive, physical abuse kind of things, hits, punches, kicks. The confusing ones then are like the private part touches, that
Mm.
touches that make you feel like you're confused and you don't know what to do about it. And then they teach how to move on from there, who to tell, who are your trusted adults. It's important to point out that we cannot put prevention all on the shoulders of children. That's a
Right.
huge ask.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. So we can educate our children all day, every day, but it's still unfair to ask a minor child to be this. Sometimes they're brave and they do tell, and sometimes they don't, and that's okay because it is a confusing situation to navigate. So that's why educating our adults in the community to help protect the children in their lives is just as important as the school lessons that we do.
So when all of the adults in our community are educated on this, it's just a safer community, right?
Right? Exactly.
And then you are also the mayor of,
Yep,
which is,
that's my part-time gig.
that's your passion project.
Yes.
And that's why I was really excited to talk to you, because we can talk about this. Like, this is a macro issue, but it's also micro. And so what I'm really curious about is the idea of trauma in general. And trauma does not have to be sexual abuse, right? It is so much more expansive than that. It can be neglect, emotionally, physically neglectful. It can be physical abuse. It can be a lot of different things. What I've talked about a lot is like, if abuse or trauma isn't addressed in childhood, it can spill into adulthood, is kind of how I describe it. And I think about if we're not talking about these hard conversations and then we become adults and then we have our own children and then we have jobs and we're like so tapped out, right? But we're working, we're raising kids, we're in a relationship. How does that affect our community? Like, I want to look at it from a developmental lifespan.
That's a really, really good point to make because a lot of people don't understand the things that they're carrying. Like I said earlier, the average age of disclosing child sexual abuse is age 52. Somebody at the age of 52 has been carrying the weight of that trauma for so many years before finally telling somebody about it. What could have happened to that person if they were to tell 30 years prior and then be able to get the help that they needed to move beyond it? There's a lot of people who walk around and say, well, that happened to me when I was a kid and I turned out okay.
Mhm.
And that very well may be true, but there's a lot of people who are dealing with a lot of past traumas, whatever that trauma is, that inadvertently affects our functioning as we move through adulthood and through life. So from my perspective, the earlier we can intervene and help people move through these traumas and kind of shed the weight of the mental anguish that we might be carrying,
Mhm.
the better off, the healthier, the more productive we can be, the better citizens, the more protective we can be for the other people in our lives instead of having to focus on some of the basic needs that have gone unmet for so many years.
Someone might think that they're okay and they're like, oh, that happened to me and I'm fine. They don't know any different. They don't know what life could have been like if they hadn't had that happen to them, or if they had disclosed 30 years ago and had gotten the help. And so their normal is unresolved trauma. We could all be flourishing if we got the help at the time,
Yeah.
but we don't even know because it didn't happen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of think of it as like a utopian society. Like, what if we could imagine this large group of people who never experienced any form of trauma whatsoever? Like, what could that group of people accomplish if they didn't have some of these things that they were dealing with and still trying to process through? We can talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's
Yes,
a
let's
lot
talk
of
about that.
people have seen it. It's the pyramid, at the very bottom. It's your very basic physiological needs, such as need for food and water and shelter and safety. If you don't feel safe in your environment, how are you going to create a piece of artwork? It's just this basic stuff
Yes.
where as you have these basic needs met, you can move up this pyramid up to the very top, which is self actualization, where you can be creative. You can do so much more with your life when you're not having to struggle with your basic needs of food, water, shelter, safety. So, again, if we're talking about a group of people who aren't struggling with trauma, basic needs, mental health, safety, physical safety, what could that group of people accomplish in the workplace, in their own
Yeah.
personal lives, in their families, and just kind of elevate their functioning beyond what they're at?
This framework that I'm developing is this idea of safety and friction, right? Like, there's this balance between, we don't want life to be just so easy, right? Like enabling almost, because then we're not resilient. And so we need this balance between, okay, hard things and challenges, friction, and also safety. As parents, we can do everything right and abuse can still happen. So that would be a friction, right? But how we respond to that is the safety. And that's what makes a resilient child into adult, as opposed to we don't handle it correctly, which there are ways to not handle it correctly. And then that just creates this whole other journey for a child that is not good. So let me throw out like an example of, I'm just making this up on the fly, of like, okay, so a child gets sexually abused. They don't disclose because they don't feel safe. They haven't had the prevention. They become an adult. They get in a relationship that is abusive in some way, maybe emotionally. Then they have children. Then they, work. And so now they're middle-aged, they have teenagers, and they don't know the signs, right? Their child is now struggling because maybe there was a divorce and it was really toxic because they just haven't been able to learn that like relational safety. They haven't
Right.
healed. They're still acting out of this like this trauma response. And now they're at work and their child is struggling and they're having to leave work to take their child to therapy, even though they haven't even been able to go to therapy because of finances, time, like just drowning, like not being able to have those, hierarchy of needs met. And now maybe when they're at work, they're not really present, they're not focused, they can't be productive. Like, what does that do for a corporation that's having these employees that are hurting secretly? Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, that feels like it would affect productivity. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you gave a fake scenario, but unfortunately, we see that exact scenario all the
know.
time. And I have so many caregivers who come in and they say, my child is struggling. They've disclosed sexual abuse. I experienced that as a child and I wasn't believed. I never got the help that I needed. I've never told anyone before. And so we hear this kind of theme of unresolved trauma. And now they are not only having a trigger for themselves, but they're having to deal with their teenager, their child's mental health needs. And beyond that, they're still trying to function with, like you said, a job and trying to keep the household together. Now they're kind of brought back into just trying to survive. And so it absolutely takes a toll in the workplace. People have had to quit their jobs before for some of these reasons. People have had to take a lot of vacation or PTO or sick leave to deal with their family issues. So you can kind of see how it's a snowball effect, how trauma affects future generations, affects your job and your functioning and all these things. And so you can really kind of paint this picture of if we had systems in place to respond effectively, appropriately, and help people jump these hurdles from the get-go and heal and know how to respond when things do get a little hairy, then it's ultimately going to trickle upwards into their future functioning. And they're not going to have to take the sick time or the PTO or leave work early because they're dealing with crisis. The more we can effectively intervene from the get-go, you're automatically going to smooth things out as life goes on.
Again, if we're talking about like, well, so why should people care about this, right? It's kind of an economic issue. And as someone who is the mayor of a community, like put your mayor hat on for a second, what does that look like? Oh, switch mayor hat.
I had it.
It's so much more zoomed out than people realize.
Yeah.
So
So
Mayor Brook Thomas.
I've got some buzzwords for you. I'm going to try not to get too in the weeds with it, but in this municipal or city lens, we often talk about asset management, which is just kind of a fancy term for the things that you have in your town, whether that's roads, buildings, utilities, water lines, sewer lines. These are all assets. And instead of letting these things just go and then break, and then you have to spend a lot of money fixing the broken things, it's managing your assets in a way that's fiscally responsible. Think about it like with your car. You wouldn't just never get an oil change, wait for it to break, and then have to buy a new car every 2 years because you never got an oil change. It's these little things that you do to manage your assets in your community to be responsible with your taxpayer dollars. And one of our biggest assets are people, whether
Mhm.
it's city employees, residents, visitors. These are all assets to your community because your employees are keeping the city functioning. They're making sure that you have your utilities and your water and your trash picked up. Your residents are very important. They're bringing in
Yeah.
the taxpayer dollars. They're making your community thrive. They're bringing in business. And then the visitors are helping your small businesses grow because they're bringing in those dollars when they're on vacation. So all three of those assets, people, entities are very important to a community. And if you're spending a lot of taxpayer dollars on fixing crisis mode all the time, it's a really inefficient way to spend your money. We have to spend a lot of money on public safety and ambulance and even on employee benefits with mental health and healthcare. If you have an entire population who is constantly struggling with their basic needs, just trying to make ends meet, maybe their child is dealing with mental health crises, it's a lot of dollars just going to if we're going back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're just,
I'll put it
yeah,
in, like, I'll screenshot it in, yes, so that people can see it.
yeah, you're spending a lot of money on things like that. But again, imagine that utopia community where we were implementing much more robust mental health care and helping families deal with these mental health crises issues before they become a crisis. We can kind of spend less dollars on just being in crisis mode and focus more on some higher level things of like making our community a destination where everyone wants to be, and we can focus on things like our roads that need to be fixed or our sidewalks or parking lots. It's all about kind of shifting that money into different areas instead of crisis mode for families.
Yeah, that is the more, like, economically responsible thing to do. It's cheaper to do preventative work and asset management than just buying a new car every 2 years, right? I think we're getting better about realizing that, like, mental health is a very real struggle and trying to create more accessibility, more resources. I mean, that's why I started my teen girl group, because it is really hard for parents to leave work, pick up their kid from school, afford individual therapy. And so my teen girl groups have been obviously much cheaper. But if someone could only afford it for nothing, they'd be invited in, right? And so trying to reduce barriers to get more kids in the room, more kids to feel like they're not alone, and just create other avenues for that. A lot of times parents bring kids to me and they're like, my kid's struggling, like this, that, and that. It's very hard to reach parents. I work from a family systems perspective, which is why I care about the community aspect, because I don't believe that children are just individual beings, right? Like they are, and they're also a part of a family, a part of a school system, a part of a community, a part of
Right.
the parents' workforce. And
Right.
so if we can educate parents, that trickles down to the children,
Right.
but they're very hard to reach. Parents are burnt out. They're busy. They're going to sports events. They're schlepping kids left and right. They barely have time to like clip their toenails. That might be a personal story. When do I clip my toenails, guys? Okay. So this idea of like, what would it look like for a workforce to be like, we're bringing in a parent educator. How do we talk to kids? How do we talk to teenagers? Teenagers are being raised in a culture that's very different than their parents' culture. And there's a lot of issues that are happening and parents feel like they're speaking a different language, which they kind of are.
When we're meeting with families here, I just explained all the resources that we have, and we can provide therapy and all this other stuff. But that is a moment of crisis for families. They're in the thick of it. Their brains moving at 1,000 miles per hour. They've got other things that they're worried about. Counseling might not be their biggest worry. And we can tell them all day that this is helpful, it's beneficial, it's going to make your child more productive in the future. In that moment, that's not when they're worried about that. They're worried about now where are we going to live? Do we have to move? Do I have to quit my job? Again, back to those basic needs. We do get a lot of people come for therapy, but sometimes it's not their priority because they're in crisis. If we could, like you said, get to parents before the crisis happens, it's going to be more impactful. They have the time and the space when they're not in crisis mode to let some of this information sink in. Oh, now I'm in crisis. I learned a year ago, 3 years ago, who to call. Maybe I don't know what to say, but I know at least who to go to get advice on how to maneuver this very tricky situation. Nobody knows what to do when they've experienced trauma or their child is going through crisis or they disclose sexual abuse. And so naturally, you're going to get a lot of reactions that maybe aren't the healthiest for children. But
Yeah.
like you said, if we can reach them before the crisis even happens, it's going to make that process better for everybody involved, the child especially, and those caregivers.
Yeah, because when you're in fight or flight mode, right, that triggered state as a parent, I mean, learning about a disclosure like that, or parents learn that their kid's cutting, right? Like there's a lot of difficult things that kids are navigating. And in that fight or flight mode, you can't think clearly. But if there was a seed that was planted, you can at least access that seed and go,
Mhm.
I don't know what to say, but I know who to call. I think probably a lot of people still don't understand or know that this resource exists in our community.
Yeah. And we do get calls from people. I think our prevention program has helped spread the word about what a CAC is, what we can do. So we'll get parents call us and just say, I don't know what to do. Here's what I'm learning. Where do I go from here? We can't solve every single problem, but we know who to call. We are a great resource to the other entities in our community to answer the
Yeah.
questions that we can't. Yeah.
You're a hub. I love the multidisciplinary approach. That was one of my favorite parts about the CAC is working in connection. I'm in private practice. I have my own business. I don't work under someone or with a team of people. I've missed that with a lot of individual therapists. It's hard to build that like network of people. And I think it's really important because we're not all on our own little island. We all need to work together. And when we work together, it's stronger. If someone asks me for therapy and for whatever reason, I can't see them based on a number of reasons. I have a network of people that I go, I can't see you, but this person would be great. That's a stronger community,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Instead of saying, bye, figure it out
Yeah.
on your own.
Yes. And I love one of my favorite things to be able to be like, oh my gosh, I have a friend, Megan Hine, she incorporates art into therapy. And I've loved being like, I don't know if I'm the best fit, but like she'd be a great fit. And that brings me a lot of joy to be able to have solid people that I can refer to.
Takes a community.
Takes a village, you
That's
know?
what it is. Yeah.
Children thrive when they have multiple safe adults in their life. They're connected to teachers, coaches, they have a hobby, they feel valued, they're close with their parents, their friends' parents, right? Like all of these little, I call them protective factors, protective adults that they can go to, they feel safe. What happens, say a teacher is talking to a kid and a kid discloses something? Like what would be a healthy response? And then what would be an unhealthy response?
It's might be unnatural because when you hear something horrific like that, it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction to respond with shock or maybe even embarrassment that someone said something about sexual abuse and you're not expecting that. If you practice or plan ahead, the best response is to respond in a way that is very neutral, unshaming, that you believe the child, that you are here to help them without much reaction. You don't want to be flat, stoic, pan face, but
Sure.
showing genuine concern and not shock or embarrassment or anger. A lot of people will respond with anger, not at the child necessarily, more so with the offender or something. A lot of parents will react and say, well, how could that person do that to my child? And then
Yeah.
seeing their parent have this anger or threats to harm that perpetrator, the child, like we said earlier, usually knows that person and they oftentimes love that person. So they don't want to see that person harmed or go to jail. They just want the abuse to stop. So when a
Yeah.
parent says something like, well, I'm going to kill that person,
Mhm.
children sometimes think that's a real threat and that can kind of stop them from disclosing or shut them down. Kind of going back and forth between healthy and unhealthy, but just to kind of
Yeah.
demonstrate both sides, having that calm, caring, I hear you, I believe you, we're going to move forward and get this taken care of. You're safe with me. Those are the messages that you want to send kids. It's also not helpful to pepper them with a bunch of questions about it
That's a good point.
because they're most likely going to have to come talk with somebody like me about what happened. So the less that they have to go into detail about what happened, the better. So we always tell parents, like, just get enough information to make sure that child's safe in that moment. If you're a
Mm,
teacher and that child says, mom abused me and she's on her way to pick me up right now, that's very different from, uncle abused me 10 years ago and I haven't seen him since. Those
sure.
are kind of the two uh,
Yeah.
sides of the spectrum of this child's very at risk versus not at risk.
Mhm. If I was a parent listening without any education on this, to actually see it played out could be helpful. So let's try. So we're going to do like a little case study role play that's just hypothetical. Someone could actually see in real time, like, someone disclosing abuse. So we're going to say that I'm like a 12-year-old and you're my neighbor. So you're not mandated reporter. You're just someone close to me. And I'm maybe at your house after school. Maybe I'm friends with your daughter or something. This is getting really specific.
Yeah.
Say the person is going to be like a stepbrother that's an adult, like 20 years old. Okay.
Okay.
So I haven't really told anyone this, and it's like super weird. And like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't even say something.
Well, whatever you need to say is safe with me. You can share whatever you need to with me.
It's just like super weird. And I'm kind of afraid that I'm going to get someone in trouble if I say it. And I really like this person. They mean a lot to me. And I'm afraid that like if I say something, that like my whole family is going to fall apart. And I'm really scared.
Sometimes things happen in families and to kids that shouldn't happen. And it's really important that if that is happening, that other people know about it so that whoever's being hurt gets the help that they need and whoever's doing the hurting gets the help that they need too. So if
Well, I
you
don't
have,
really think I've been hurt necessarily. It's just like weird.
okay, well, tell me about it.
So, like, sometimes my stepbrother shows me really weird things online. Like, it's like naked people and they're like
Hmm.
doing things. It's been going on for a while. I don't know. He then like kind of like touches me on the thigh and stuff. And I mean, he's really nice. Like, he takes me out for ice cream a lot of the times. And, like I really look up to him. He's like a really good guy.
Yeah.
He's really funny too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Dylan, thank you for sharing some of these things that you've been experiencing with me. It's important that you trusted me to share those things. What I need to do is to make sure that you're safe in your home. What I would like to do is talk with your mom about some of the things that you shared with me. I don't want to make you have to talk about this kind of stuff more because it might be hard to talk about. And you might have to talk about this again with somebody else. But again, I want to make sure that you're safe. So why don't we go talk with your mom together and see where we need to go from here?
But I'm afraid I'm gonna get in trouble or, like, that he's gonna get in trouble, and, like, I don't want my family to fall apart because I don't know if it's bad what he did. I mean, I don't think I'm unsafe. He just, like, touches me sometimes and shows me these things.
Anytime you feel uncomfortable or like someone has done something to you that you're not okay with, it needs to be handled. I think it's important that we talk with your mom and make sure that we can take care of these things so that they don't keep happening to you.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah. So, again, like, you're neutral, there's no shame, you're almost not, like, normalizing it, but, like, "Hey, we're gonna go talk to your mom," not like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like, I knew it," right?
Yeah.
He was so creepy. Your calm and not being shocked is what creates, like, the calmness in the kid, right? Mirror neurons. We are our kids' regulation.
Right.
We talk about it a lot in the toddler years because when they're going through fireworks of development, that
Yeah.
like when we stay calm, our kid is allowed to borrow our regulation. The teenagers are also very similar because they're also exploding. So when we stay calm through these things, the kids can borrow our calm. And I felt that with how you responded to that.
A lot of people have a hard time believing this stuff when a child first tells them, and that is okay. We don't expect every parent to automatically believe something happened, especially when the alleged perpetrator is someone that the entire family may love or rely on financially.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's hard for people to say, I believe you right away. It's important to just say, this is really important what you told me, and we're going to make sure that we figure out what's going on and get people the help that they need without that judgmental tone of, she would have never done that. That kind of
Yeah.
thing makes kids shut down and not want to talk further about it.
I love to hear you. 'Cause it's not saying I believe you if you feel uncomfortable saying that. It's just like, I hear you. We're gonna take this seriously. And there's so many different layers to what I shared is photos online, pornography. It could be something as simple as that. And if someone discloses at that time, like during the grooming process, further sexual abuse could be interrupted. And again, the relationship that someone has with, say, a neighbor or a friend's parent is like the ground for someone disclosing something like that.
You don't want a child to experience what you were just describing, but if you can catch it there and stop anything further from happening, it's how it
Yeah.
should work. Because if you don't
Yeah.
respond appropriately and you say, I doubt that's happening, and then that child still remains around that perpetrator, then that abuse likely will continue and become more serious over time.
One thing that I've liked to talk to kids about is, and I have to do this very delicately because I don't want to put this burden on them. They might be interrupting something that could be happening to other kids too. Not as like pressure, but almost gives them confidence of like, oh, this does matter. A lot of times they feel powerless when it's been taken from them. You have the power to do something with this. On the flip side, I think we should talk about kids who have exhibited some problematic sexual behaviors. We've been talking a lot about like how do we respond when a victim makes a disclosure. Let's switch to that lens because again, all of it is important.
So you use the term correctly. Problematic sexualized behaviors is basically when young children are engaging in sexual activities with maybe another like-age child. I do a lot of interviews with maybe 2 5-year-olds who are acting out, or 7-year-olds, or a 9 and a 7. And the idea is not to call these kids perpetrators or lock them up. We want to explore what's happening in that child's life. Why are they engaging in these behaviors? Did they learn it from somebody? Is it normal sexual exploration, or is it problematic and it's becoming more abusive, coercive, taking advantage of a situation, doing things in secrecy? That's the behavior you want to detect early on and stop and correct and put them on the right path towards a healthy sexual mindset. As they grow up into teenagers and adults, they're going to engage in sexual behaviors. You want to make sure it's healthy and not abusive.
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of parents might think, what do you mean 2 5-year-olds exploring sexual behavior? It is really common for kids to be curious about each other's bodies, right? They're growing, they're learning, they're curious. And so it's not uncommon for like age peers to be exploring that. But at the same time, that doesn't mean we just let it happen. We still have those conversations around not only can someone not touch you in an unsafe way, but you can't touch someone else in an unsafe way. I've been talking to my kids about this since they were like 1 year old.
Yep. Yep.
And even saying like, I'm helping you in the bathroom and this is the way that I'm helping you. And if someone helps you in a different way, different than how I've helped you, that also can be a little flag for them to go, oh, well, my mom doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And you're giving that information to them at a young age, but also saying, and you can't help someone in the bathroom.
Yep. And using proper anatomical names for body parts is really helpful so that if or when something does happen to a child and they go to tell their teacher, if they've got a cutesy name for their private part and they say somebody touched my cookie last night, that is not clear information. If somebody comes and says butt or vagina, that is so much more clear and everyone knows what that child is communicating versus a guessing game.
Yeah.
Makes my job easier too.
If a parent's listening, what are like 3 things that they could take away that would be helpful information for them to know? Like in terms of prevention and talking about body safety.
Sometimes we like to use the term initiator because we don't want to call kids
That's easier.
perpetrators, offenders, or anything. But when they're initiating this problematic, unhealthy sexual behavior, it's important to intervene as soon as possible because if you don't and they continue those behaviors and continue to offend on other children, what happens when they become an adult and nobody told them? I used to work in the prison system in Illinois and I worked with some of those people who didn't stop those behaviors and then they became prisoners. And that's not what we want to see for a community. We want to help children, like you said, not be victims, but also not be offenders too. So when parents or caregivers recognize that a child is engaging in something unhealthy, it's just kind of like what we talked about when a child is disclosing that they've been a victim. You still don't want to be angry or disciplining them. It's important to have healthy conversations about, your body, your private parts belong to you, and it's okay for you to explore your own body. It's not okay for you to explore other people's bodies. It's not okay for you to look at other people's bodies. And if you have questions, I want you to come to me. If you're having any issues, that's important for you to talk with me about. But setting those clear boundaries of when and how children engage with their own bodies.
Yeah.
If they want to explore, that's okay to do it on their own time, not in front of other people, not involving other people. And then if there's something medically wrong, know who to go to talk to about some concerns that you have.
Why I think that this is important is that if this happened to a parent and they never got the help that they needed, like if they were a victim, they might not even know what problematic sexual behavior is because they have a very different worldview of it if they were taken advantage of when they were younger. And so should we define what problematic sexual behavior is?
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Okay.
And it's going to be different for each developmental stage. So the younger kids, if they need help with hygiene, maybe they need help with bathing, having conversations about who is okay to help them wash, wipe, diaper changes. Mommy's okay to change your diaper, but neighbor is not okay. So having those conversations about who and when touches can happen, not engaging in kind of touching or looking of other people's private parts, how to engage with their own private parts in a way that's healthy, and if they need help, who to talk to. As kids get older, the messages are going to be the same, but you also want to incorporate those elements of consent. So the age of 16 is consent. Any kid younger than that should not be engaging in any sexual contact with another child. At 15 years old, you're still not legally able to engage in sexual activity.
Yeah.
But once that child does turn 16, how to have a healthy sexual relationship if they choose to do that, or if the parents are okay with those things. It's important to have those conversations about recognizing signs of an abusive relationship. So that
Yeah.
force, coercion, pressure. We often hear kids talk about, well, I did it because I felt like I had to, or he told me that he was going to kill himself if I didn't do these things, or everybody else was doing it, so I felt like I had to. And those conversations need to incorporate the virtual world.
Thank you.
So many kids are getting on Snapchat and all these different apps and engaging in very problematic, dangerous behavior online involving sending and receiving really inappropriate photos that could remain online for the rest of their lives. So
Yeah.
kids don't often understand that once those pictures are out there, they're out there.
I talk to kids about like consent needs to happen every time. You don't consent once in a relationship and it's just that's it for the relationship. And I think kids are like, oh, I didn't realize that. You're allowed to say yes one day and you're allowed to say no the next day. And having kids be more comfortable about like sharing. And again, this is such an uncomfortable topic. I understand that. Probably for us who are well versed in it, like it's much easier for us to talk about. But that's because we have the education. It's been normalized for us, which is ideally what we would want for more people. We're all sexual beings. Like you said, kids grow up to be sexual adults and we want it to be healthy so that we can be thriving, productive, healthy, successful members of society. This podcast is universal. Anyone can listen to it. And what I like to always ask my guests, if you had advice for a teen girl, something that you wish you had heard as a teen girl, what would it be?
Having once been a teen girl myself, once upon a time, many, many years ago, and I interview teen girls all the time here. I have to do peer review with other forensic interviewers around the state and sometimes around the nation. People are a little afraid to talk with teenagers, boys and girls, because they're somewhere in between childhood and adulthood, and they are dealing with very real issues. They're intelligent, and they are dealing with a very complex world that we didn't deal with when we were younger. I didn't have Snapchat when I was in middle school, and I'm thankful for that. But I just want to validate teenagers that being a teenager is sometimes a very rough time frame to be in, and it's hard to see beyond those years and think if you're going through something that's difficult or even traumatic, it's hard to see the other side of that.
Yeah.
So if you are struggling with something, it can be very temporary. There's also so much in this world that wants to give you the help that you're needing. And so finding different groups like CACs or teen groups or whatever fills your bucket, there's help and hope out there. And I think teenagers are one of my favorite age groups to talk to because they have so much to offer our world, and they are smarter than some adults because they get things that we don't understand. So whatever you're experiencing, there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's people to help you, and you have a lot to offer our communities.
Yes. I love that. I feel so aligned with everything that you said. Like, obviously, I talk to teens all the time. I love it. And in the Herald Palladium, teen girl therapist of Southwest Michigan, which is so cute. But like, they have so much potential. And like, when I tell people I work with teen girls, they're like, oh my gosh, like, how do you do it? And I'm like, I want people to like teenagers.
Yeah.
I want them to see what you see. And I feel like unless you really get to like talk with them in these ways, just have this like really negative misconception of what teenagers can offer. And a lot of times we look at like the difficult behavior that teenagers do, right? And I get it. They can be passionate and stubborn, yes. And also, like you said, they're navigating a very complex world while also having a very complex developmental experience. There's a lot of neurons firing. And so to give them a little bit more grace
Yeah.
and respect. Also, what you said about there's light at the end of the tunnel. I would say that everything that I went through in my childhood and my teenage years, good, bad, ugly, whatever, were so impactful to the adult that I became because I did the work and I felt like I also had really great people around me that were like, you're awesome. Like you can succeed. Right. And then I started believing that. And so really the language that we use with our kids and how we build them up can be quite literally transformative to someone's life.
Absolutely.
Like I was a little bit of a hot mess my 8th grade, 9th grade year. And then 10th grade, I was like, what am I doing? And because I had these teachers that made me feel smart, I had these coaches that made me feel like I could accomplish all of my track goals.
Yeah.
And then I started to retrain the narrative in my head of like, I do have all this potential. And then I started living out in that potential. So,
Yeah. Sometimes all it takes is just one person believing in you, and then you're like, well, I am something. I can be something in this world.
yes. Yes.
Definitely.
And then that creates this trajectory that then they become an adult. They get in healthy relationships. They find jobs that they're passionate about. They show up to work and they're not in fight or flight. They're in that Maslow's higher like level of art and creativity and all the things. Okay, so this has been so helpful to talk about. I want to end with if you could impact our community in different ways, like what are the top things that you wish you could see our community start focusing on, prioritizing? You can put the mayor hat back on.
I'll kind of take it on and off maybe with this response. I really wish every community member really knew what a CAC was and did and how to utilize it, and not feel afraid to call and say, hey, I have a question. Hey, I'm dealing with this. My family's going through this. Or I have a student. What do I do? What do I say? We're happy when people call and ask us questions because we really do want to be your local area experts in all things child abuse. I described the prevention program and the intervention and the therapy and the healing. We also do expert testimony in criminal trials too. So we want to be all things sexual abuse and educating the community on how impactful this issue is, and not make it taboo. Make it something that we can easily talk about.
For the average person, what does that mean, expert testimony?
So when cases go to trial in criminal cases, sometimes we will be asked by either prosecutors or sometimes defense attorneys to come in and talk about dynamics of child sexual abuse. So depending on the case, there's a lot of different areas that we can speak to. One example is delay in disclosure. Why would a child not tell about their sexual abuse the instant it happened? Why did they wait a month or a year or 5 years to tell?
Yeah.
And we can kind of speak to the fact that that's a very normalized behavior for a child who's been sexually abused.
Yeah.
That's one example.
In the court process, like you would be sworn in and you give an expert testimony for juries.
Correct. Yep.
I saw one of your former forensic interviewers be the expert testimony when I was doing my internship at CPS or foster care, and was like blown away with how well she did. And that's why I was like, I have to do my master's placement at the CAC. I was so impressed.
If I'm going to put on my mayor lens here, think I want all communities to embrace this idea of a trauma-informed lens. People wonder, why would a city or a mayor or government care about mental health? And we talked about it earlier, but the healthier that our communities are, the more efficient we're going to be, the happier we're going to be, the more attractive we're going to be for tourists to come to, the more we can do financially with some of our goals. So if we can just embrace the fact that people deal with some hard stuff and that we can heal and implement policies, whether it's a governmental agency or a corporation, policies that promote family and child well-being, mental health, physical health, put that at the forefront of your mind, because the happier and healthier we are, not only are we better off as a community, but as a corporation, you're going to just do better in the long run.
Yeah.
That's never a bad thing to have a trauma lens.
It's never a bad thing to have a trauma lens. A healthy individual might be able to access the creative part of themselves that wants to start a small business, right? But if they're in fight or flight mode, there's no way they're starting a small business that could then directly impact communities. This is why this matters.
It's directly related, and it's kind of fun to think about how we can improve our community. let's go into April, celebrating Child Abuse Prevention Month.
Yes. Do you guys have any events coming up for that?
We have a lot of events. We have a euchre tournament at Watermark Solarium coming up later this month. The FOP is putting on a fundraiser for us. We've got numerous trainings. You go to our website, it's all there.
Yes, go to your website and learn all about what you guys are doing. People can become monthly donors, I assume.
Absolutely. Yep. We're always looking
Right?
for more people to support our cause. We
Uh-huh.
are happy to give tours to groups. I love giving tours because having a visual of what we do is so much different from me just telling people.
Well, thank you so much for all of the work that you do. You've been in this job for almost 10 years. One thing that I've taken away from the CAC is that you guys have very low turnover. And for the type of work that you're doing, which is very heavy, very emotional, to have low turnover shows so much about the health of this organization, that you guys take care of your people, you're passionate about what you do. And thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing. It's really important.
Yeah, I think that's a testament to our executive director, Jamie Rosso, and the support she gets from our board members. Yay!
Yay.
That you're absolutely right. Even people who are no longer with us, they were here for 10, 15, 20 years because they believe in the mission. They felt supported. They felt like if they had their own personal or family issues going on, there was no question about, hey, go take care of you and your family. The work's still going to be here. We cover for each other. There's no shame or guilt about having to take time off to meet your personal needs. So that is an extremely important part of not only the work that we do here, but for any business corporation.
Yeah. So hopefully more businesses will be excited about investing preventatively in their employees, their asset management, so that they can do what's important to them.
Productivity, yeah,
Productivity.
profits, all of that will just benefit.
Yes. Employee retention. Amazing. Well, Brooke, you're a powerhouse. Thank you so much for all of your education and just giving us a glimpse into all of the work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, thank you for giving us this platform. And Dylan, thank you for the work you're doing with teen girls and the therapy interventions that you have in our community. It's such a needed and impactful thing. So thank you.
If this episode shifted something in you, whether you're a parent, a community member, a business leader, or all three, that's the point. Because what we talked about today isn't just about awareness. It's about what we do with that awareness. When we invest in prevention, education, and early intervention, children are safer, families are more stable, and adults show up more regulated, present, and capable at home and at work. And that ripple effect matters. Stronger relationships, healthier communities, more engaged, productive employees. This is what it means to take a trauma-informed lens, not just in therapy rooms, but in schools, organizations, and workplaces. If you're listening as a parent, start the conversations. You don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to be willing. If you're listening as a community member, share this episode because awareness creates protection. And if this episode impacted you, send it to one person, a friend, parent, coworker, because the more people who understand this, the safer our kids become. And if you're wondering how to actually make a difference locally, one of the most direct ways is by supporting the Children's Advocacy Center. All of their services, prevention, forensic interviews, and therapy are provided at no cost to families, which means they rely on community support. Becoming a monthly donor, even at a small amount, directly helps keep these services accessible for children and families who need them most. Not years from now, right now. And if you're listening as a business owner, leader, or organization, this is your invitation to think differently. What would it look like to support your employees before they hit crisis? Because when you invest in family mental health and parent education, you reduce burnout, you increase retention, and you build a workforce that can actually thrive, not just survive. That's not just good leadership, that's smart business. This is exactly the work I do, partnering with organizations to provide parent education workshops and trauma-informed support that helps employees show up better at work and at home. Because when you strengthen families, you strengthen your workforce. Learn more about the Children's Advocacy Center, get involved this April during Child Abuse Prevention Month, or become a donor, or do everything. Just visit their website. They will tell you exactly what they need. And if this conversation stayed with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, talk about it, ask questions, Start the conversation that most people avoid. And as always, the way we show up for our kids becomes the way they learn to show up for themselves. Last but not least, have to throw this in there. If you like this podcast and want to support it, click follow on the podcast home. That ensures that you never miss an episode. Also, the data is really helpful for Spotify to distribute it to more people. And that's what we want. We want to amplify these conversations because they matter. Thanks so much.